Today I'd like to tell you about somebody that is a good friend of mine that I met out here in the deserts of Arizona. His name was Captain Ron. That's what he told us to call him. Captain Ron lived in a little tent, a one-man tent, where there was just enough room for his sleeping roll, for his little sleeping bag and cushion and stuff. And then he had a canopy that he had cut off the legs on one side so it was at an angle, facing the prevailing winds, and then he was beside an ironwood tree on the other side that was by the wash. And he was staying for the winter here in the warmth of Arizona. But he had come, I don't know how long before, from Florida. In Florida, he owned a boat, and he would take people out on the ocean and charge them. He was a charter boat, and that's where he got the name of Captain Ron. Captain Ron was a great guy, the kind of guy that would be a really good father. The way that he talked to children, he just had a way with people, especially with kids. He spoke in a way that made you feel safe, and it made you feel wanted and appreciated and excited to tackle some new project. And Captain Ron was traveling around the United States on a motorcycle. Truth was, it was actually a scooter, but it was one of the larger ones, one of the largest ones. Later on, he ended up getting an actual motorcycle, but he had to carry everything that he owned had to fit on that motorcycle. And one day when he and I were talking, he described something to me that I have heard many other people describe. It's a movement that's happening in the world right now. And I think that it's a really good movement. He said that first of all, down in Florida where he lived, he had his boat. He lived on that boat, or on a boat, for much of the years that he lived in Florida, which was much of his adult life. And he owned in town a 2-acre parcel. And this 2-acre parcel was kind of his, it was the place where he put all of his stuff, all of his junk. He would buy old boats, with the idea of fixing them up and selling them, or fixing them up and keeping them. And he'd buy other things. He had boats and trailers and vehicles, I'm assuming, and he had other stuff, tools and different things. 2 acres with a bunch of stuff. And one day he looked out at his 2-acre parcel, and just this knowing came, this clear knowing. It's all gotta go. It's all gotta go, was the message, And he's not the sort of person who really claims revelation, It was like, and he didn't attribute it necessarily to God per se. It was more just like this knowing he had, which came from an otherworldly, unseen source that he knew that everything had to go. And so he started to work on getting rid of everything on this 2-acre lot, and pretty much everything he owned. He said that it took him 2 years to do it. And thing by thing, he started by calling his friends and saying, hey, I'm going to get rid of, this old boat I've got, and this other old boat I've got, and these different things I've got. Do any of you want them? Here's what I'd sell them for. And he sold the boat that he had that was on the water, his charter boat. He gave things away. He said it took him 2 years, but he finally got rid of everything that he owned except for what he could fit on that motorcycle, and he took off, and he started traveling around the country. And I tell this story because it's not an uncommon story. The minimalist movement, the van life movement, all of these movements seem to be happening to people individually, almost without even talking to each other. Although some people will see a YouTube video, and that's what prompts them to begin. But it's a very real thing. More and more people have this desire to throw off their worldly possessions and leave and to follow some sort of unseen guide that is prompting them to live with very little, to trust, and to travel around upon the globe without the fetters and trappings of worldly things and obligations. Many of them are willing to live in poverty, seeming poverty. That's what Captain Ron was doing. He had very little. He had some sort of little amount of money that came in every month, but it wasn't always enough. But he just trusted that there would be enough to take care of himself. And there always was. And I guess I just want to give a word of encouragement, because I was recently speaking to somebody who's feeling this exact same thing that Captain Ron felt, but it's hard for this person because the minute that they think about, throwing off their worldly possessions and living this simple lifestyle, the minute they do this, they have a wave of other thoughts that come, that this is crazy, this, it doesn't make sense. But the truth is there's so many people who are feeling the same thing. It's not crazy. And I'd encourage you, if you could have seen Captain Ron and his simple life and the joy and the peace that it brought him, you would know that it was a good thing. And that's all I have to say today.